Elon Musk, or is it violation of some law somewhere? Like the giant blinking X they put on the roof? Take down the cute bird and put up the thing that just blasts out the eyeballs of the people across the street?
Who knew you couldn't put up large signage without getting any sort of approval?
Yeah, weird. Weird that you lack any empathy whatsoever for the people across the street trying to sleep.
And then you also took it down without a permit.
I appreciate that. I agree with you 100%. But to be fair, when he's like, the outcome is a fine, I have all of the money.
Quiet, please.
That's the problem with the outcome being a fine.
Yeah.
This is where Singapore caning you.
Oh, interesting.
Is actually got a superior system.
You're advocating for caning of Elon Musk?
Well, yes.
Because let me tell you, that GoFundMe petition would fucking do about $100 billion. We would be the richest two men. Go fund Elon Musk, or go cane Elon Musk. Right? I'm buying that URL as soon as we stop recording.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. That would get us there.
In 4,
that would 100%
3,
get us there.
2.
The Apple Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, episode number 35. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm Stu Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we'll look at beating the lottery and the invention of air conditioning.
Those two things do not go together.
Why not?
Well, I guess if you invented air conditioning,
then you win the lottery.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you lived in a world where there was no air conditioning,
yes,
and now you live in a world where there is air conditioning,
yes,
you won the lottery.
That's a good point.
That's better than the lottery.
And if you win the lottery, I guess you could go then buy air conditioning.
I don't want to bring down the festivities, but I do want to mention Bob Barker passing away because he was such a great, great man.
I went and had myself actually neutered this year.
Did you? Spayed and neutered?
I literally did.
Sure.
Spayed and neutered. Take my uterus out while you're in there, too.
He literally wrote checks for like $5 million for boats that would save whales who were not...
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, it's an amazing story. Look it up.
He was like such a staple. You could always just count on going to whatever, CBS at 11 a.m. and just hearing his voice.
But beyond being that wonderful, sunshiny, consistent, wonderful personality, I have no idea what he was like in real life. Who knows? You know, as soon as they yell cut, he might have been the most grumpy, I
think you would know by now if he was.
Probably, yes. He always seemed very joyful, but he was a vegetarian. He was like, in every possible way I can think of, he was a great person. As someone said on Twitter, he came as close as he could to 100 without going over. 99 years old.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
It's International Overdose Awareness Day.
I don't know how I feel about that.
You wish we didn't have to be aware of any overdoses. Of course. You wish there were none.
Can we just make like a little turkey thermometer that goes on my arm, and then when I'm getting close to overdosing, it just pops out? I noticed that.
I can't believe there are places in the world where the police departments won't carry Narcan.
Yeah, I don't understand.
What's wrong with you that you think this is not a good thing?
The thing that saves the human?
Like you're somehow teaching them a lesson by making them die. Guess what? That lesson's going to fall on deaf ears.
I was going to say, it turns out you are teaching them a lesson. It's just a one-time teaching.
Exactly.
It doesn't really solve the problem.
It's also National Diatomaceous Earth Day.
Oh, delicious.
You know what diatomaceous earth is?
I do.
It's really kind of an amazing substance.
It's a superfine powder. You mainly see it used in pools.
You do use it in swimming pools for filtering out the water because it's such a fine powder.
My pool uses DE.
Well, yeah, which is diatomaceous earth, right? Yeah. They call it DE. Is your pool salt or chlorine?
Well, both.
Well, yes, the chlorine.
Turn the salt into chlorine.
Exactly.
People are like, does the salt kill everything? No,
the chlorine does, right?
It's not a fucking hypertension.
Guess what salt's made out of?
The algae doesn't fall into the salt and be like, oh, my heart's stopping. You've given it hypertension and it just dies.
It's really stressed algae for a while and then it has a little heart attack and
I totally stepped on you. Guess what salt's made out of? That's actually really funny.
Well, that's how you get the pool clean.
I understand.
You cleave what the salt is made out of.
Yeah, totally.
There's no magic to it.
If you're a pool owner, I strongly recommend getting a good saltwater chlorine generator because it is the best.
Diatomaceous earth is a natural substance made up of fossilized remains of diatoms, a type of algae. It's fossils from algae. How did we discover this like algae burial ground and then invade it and decide, you know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to clean my pool water.
Yeah. There were 376 other things they did that did not work.
Oh, probably.
Like, I'm going to put this on my pasta. And you're like, fucking terrible. That's crunchy. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, slide that off the list. It was like Edison, right? I mean, Edison didn't fail 900 times. It just took him some practice runs.
10,000 times he would look at it brightly.
Is that up to 10,000
Well, yeah,
now?
that's what he said about the light bulb. It's just it's one more thing I know that doesn't work as the filament.
He tried diatomaceous earth. Didn't work. My understanding of this stuff, by the way, too, if you're using this in your pool, is that you need to be careful because it is extremely bad if you get it in your lungs.
They're little tiny skeletons. They have sharp edges. It is why it works as like a natural insecticide.
They can't walk on it.
Well, no, they ingest it.
Oh, really?
And they end up just cutting themselves up inside.
I assumed it was like poltergeist. They saw it and they're just like, oh, there's a bunch of dead fucking insects over there. I'm not going over
We're
there.
getting out of here. We're
Fuck
leaving.
this.
We're leaving.
Fuck this. And then like one of the bees like ties a rope around it and it goes into the TV. Is that? No, I read that once on the internet.
Ants, cockroaches, bed bugs, fleas, and ticks. Sprinkle it on your carpet, your furniture, your bedding, and you'll kill fleas and their eggs.
I love how we just went from whatever you do, don't inhale it to sprinkle it on your bed. Just like have a party. Just have a DE
By the way, you can
party.
put it in dog food.
Really?
If your dog has fleas, you can put food-grade diatomaceous earth in dog food. Yes, and you will kill the dog's
How does
flea
it get to the
infestation.
fleas?
The abrasive glass-like edges on the diatomaceous earth cut through the flea's exoskeleton.
Okay.
How is your week going?
So far, so good. I don't have a lot of complaints. My children are starting school.
Oh, yeah.
Which
Back
is
to
great.
that.
Both of my children school, I have noticed the couple times I've been there in the past week getting ready for school, it is cold as all hell inside. Like they have the air set to 11, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
All these places now, especially in California, have turf, artificial turf instead of grass.
Which the bad
That
stuff
shit's
radiates.
hot.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There is artificial turf where they've actually figured out, they've engineered how to keep that from happening.
How's your week?
Over the weekend, there was a high school party that my kid attended.
Okay.
So already I'm stressed.
Of course.
You wait till your kids get in high school.
He's fucking
you'll
going
see
now.
what this is like.
5-year-old's going to high school
Is that
parties
right?
now. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, he sent me a picture of him doing like a keg stand the other day.
It was originally supposed to be like the seniors that go to their high school.
Yeah.
And then it was some juniors came and then a bunch of juniors came.
No, my kid
and then
literally
some
got the text.
sophomores came. Then other schools started coming.
no.
They had literally
It's a real party.
200 plus people in this residential house up on Summit.
Yeah.
You know, the neighbors hardly complained about that, I'm sure.
Of course.
There were 5 police cars and 5 fire trucks.
Wow.
2 kids, I'm friends with their parents. 2 kids passed out, had to go to the ER.
Oh, no.
One of them I don't know, may have just been too much alcohol. The other one I do know. He took a sip of someone's drink, and that drink was probably spiked. Because when he woke up at the hospital, like around daybreak, he was under for a long time, and they were monitoring his vitals. You know, the hospital's absolutely excellent here. When he woke up, he was not drunk. If you pass out from drinking,
booze, of course,
you wake up and you're still
they took
drunk.
Some blood from him and figured it out that it wasn't BAC, it was something else. They did some tox screen.
Whatever they did, but he took
terrible.
a sip of something that was spiked, and you know, fentanyl spiking is like way too rampant. That's totally a thing, and it's so beyond dangerous.
Yeah.
I mentioned this because it's Overdose Awareness Day.
Yeah.
Jamie Call, 42, wonderfully talented swimmer for USC. I don't know if you remember.
I don't.
Accidental fentanyl
When was
poisoning.
this?
The investigation just happened. We just found out she passed away from fentanyl poisoning, but just heartbreaking. Anyway, kids, when you go to parties, you don't really need to go to parties like this, but I know you're going to because you're kids.
Sure.
Do not eat or drink anything you haven't personally broken the seal on. You have not perfectly opened yourself.
I don't disagree with the advice, but like that's so hard to do.
My kid claims he does it. If he's going to pour himself like vodka or whatever, he grabs a bottle that has never been opened, and because I hammer away on him, I'm like, you do not know what is in that bottle unless you're the one who cracks the seal.
Yeah.
And so if he's going to have like a White Claw or whatever, and the minute you set it down or look away from it, you can't touch it now. It's dead.
Yeah,
you don't want to have to make all these crazy rules, but I also kind of want him to not be in the hospital.
Yeah, or dead.
Exactly. So happy Overdose Awareness Day on that bright note.
Great happy. Was this supposed to be a funny show? Didn't we at one point start out with this being a humorous show?
Those were good days. Meanwhile, the White House earlier this month asked Congress for nearly $800 million in additional funding to fight fentanyl overdose by expanding access to addiction care and assisting the Departments of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services in working to reduce the amount of fentanyl entering the country. Yeah. Which is good. Hopefully they don't have to fight too hard. Hopefully they get that money.
You know, here's my thing about this. We tried this a couple times before, right? Trying to stop bringing in all various drugs. That seems really hard. Not that we're not doing a reasonable
we're
job.
a big market for it. As long as there's a market for it, you're going to find a way to get it in.
Can we spend a little bit of $800 million giving everybody fentanyl test kits? Because that to me seems like a better way to keep people from dying from fentanyl is to give everyone test kits.
You get to a certain age, and I'm here now, where Charlie is caffeine, and you just don't even want caffeine anymore. I stay away from caffeine.
Like, you want some blow? I'm like, I just had to have a Red Bull. I'm fine.
Exactly.
Leave me alone. Not
even a Red Bull. I had the amount of caffeine that's in a small piece of dark chocolate. I'm going to be up all night.
I just had a piece of Toblerone. Let's go fucking party. I am off the rails. Could you imagine the remake of Scarface with Al Pacino?
With a little bit of chocolate?
It's all Toblerone. It's like Scarface and Willy Wonka had a baby. That'd be so good.
Let's get to our headlines.
We should. Let's do it.
Tesla braces for the first trial involving autopilot fatality. We are a hilarious show today.
We are just never going to have an episode without a Tesla or just an overdose or just some fentanyl.
Fatalities. Man, but this is kind of a good thing. I mean, you actually want there to be some investigation into this, and it's finally starting here.
Into cars killing people?
I
saw Christine, for Christ's sake. Yes, I want fucking investigations into it.
You cannot call a product full self-driving and then have a person expect that they need to be doing the driving.
I agree with you.
Controlling.
But I really think, should some liability come with that? Sure.
Of course.
But
every other company calls it driver assist.
Sure.
Which means we're only assisting you.
Yeah.
Pay attention. You don't don't get in the back seat and make a sandwich. You got to pay attention. Tesla calls it full self-driving. Yeah, there's liability attached to that.
Yeah. All right.
It's still L2.
All right. Just change the fucking name, Elon.
They also like massively gouge for it. They $15,000.
Well, you say massively gouge. I say you price what the market will bear. People are
because the market's full of morons.
Of course. At what point do you stop policing
Every
the
other
morons?
electric car company sells driver assist, and mostly it's thrown in for free.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's L2. If people knew there was a scale for quote unquote self-driving.
If only there was a 5-point scale.
An actual rating scale where you could actually tell what this software is doing. You'd know, oh, you're buying L2 for $15,000. I'm getting L2 thrown in for free.
Okay, so that's one view. Or hear me out.
Okay.
You could just be a Tesla fanboy and buy any piece of shit they turn out.
I got you.
Like they fucking sold a bajillion flamethrowers, which was just a propane gun and people are like, oh, I want one of those.
Oh, sure.
Like, really? But at some point I'm like, okay, this is brilliant. Like they didn't say this flamethrower is going to, paint your house. Like it did what it said on the tin.
Tesla faces 2 trials in quick succession with more to follow.
Yeah, I think there's more to come. One of these was the guy in Florida who got decapitated.
Yes.
I don't think that was a selling feature when he went to buy that car. They're like, oh, bonus, it could decapitate you.
Tesla says there are no self-driving cars on the road today. Well, then why do you call your thing full self-driving?
By the way, I love their excuse. I feel like there's nothing out there that does this.
Yes, and yours doesn't either.
But that's okay. So we can call it whatever we want.
To anyone listening at home, there is a rating scale, L1 through 5. All self-driving is rated on this scale.
Sure.
So you can compare all self-driving systems to each other.
Well, what their capabilities
The Waymo system is literally only L4. There is no L5 yet.
Yeah.
And all that means is you can get in the Waymo, you're very safe. I mean, historically, you're very safe. You get in the Waymo, and if something does happen, a human will come on over the radio-controlled system, however that works, and will take you out of the danger zone.
Yeah.
I have to go back to Elon here and talk about the craziness that he's been doing with X, what used to be Twitter, and what has happened with Starlink with
Ukraine.
With the Ukraine.
Sorry,
correct, where he literally offered service to the Ukraine. But kidding, just for the first 2 weeks, that was the free trial.
Well, it was
now you got to pay.
It was kind of worse than that. It wasn't just for the first 2 weeks. It was for like this geofenced line. Yeah. And you guys get too close to what he deems or what Starlink deems is not acceptable, and they turned it off. Right. That was part of the problem. And then, he had this like real moral dilemma of, well, I don't want to support the war machine. It's like, why the fuck did you give it to them to begin with, buddy?
Yeah, I don't think he has any introspection.
Did you think they were baking cakes? They weren't fucking baking cakes.
This is someone who admits that he is on ketamine. Yeah. He is on opioids. Yeah. We all watched him smoke a blunt on Joe Rogan. Maybe that's why he's making all these weird, crazy Twitter proclamations. And maybe that's why he's going off the rails.
I'm more disappointed about him going on Joe Rogan than smoking a blunt on Joe Rogan. For sure. I'm just like, if any one of those
I don't care if he smokes pot. I don't care what I don't care what he does. It's how it affects everything else. Tesla's had to lower its prices this year 6 times to keep up with all of the other electric cars coming
inflation.
out.
You have to keep lowering your price to match. Oh wait, that's not how that works. It's the other way around.
While we're on the subject of Tesla, Texas has approved 2 Tesla virtual power plants to help out the state's power grid.
Yeah, so this is one of those stories when I saw the headline, I had to double check the URL to see if it was Babylon Bee or or the Onion. Because I was like, what the fuck is a virtual power plant?
What it means is the excess power that people generate from their Tesla solar panels or whatever can now go back onto the grid.
Yes.
California's been doing this for 40 years. I'm not sure why Texas is acting like they've discovered gold.
Texas, welcome to 2000.
Exactly.
We also have free 2-day shipping on Amazon.
It was way before 2000.
Of course.
But now Texas is doing it, and they're calling it Tesla virtual power plants. By the way, they'll take power from any system. It doesn't have to be a Tesla system. They've just branded it Tesla virtual power plants.
Somebody should get the love. Might as well be Tesla.
Wildlife officials say SpaceX launch left behind significant damage. This past April, SpaceX Starship launched, and they called it a big success, even though the rocket ship exploded. Yeah. At which time, everyone was mostly complaining about the explosion, not about the debris left behind. Sure. We talked about last week, SpaceX, and I was kind of minimizing the debris. In this case, actually, the debris was quite significant. It destroyed some endangered animals and all sorts of things. And SpaceX did nothing to prevent this.
Well, it sounds like something else that the quote I think from this article was that it, quote, baffled experts was that they didn't use like flame diverters or these flame trenches.
Because they're moving fast and breaking things.
Apparently. And
in this case, they're actual breaking live animals.
Apparently, like the boosters on these rockets, like I think the exact wording was punched holes in concrete.
Yeah.
And these launch pads are like,
they're big versions. They're big versions of the flamethrower that he was selling earlier.
That's exactly right. It's just crazy.
It caused a 3.5 acre fire.
That's a big fire.
I used to think he was just bad with technology. Now I'm kind of under the impression maybe he's just a bad person.
Just a dick.
He's just not taking any responsibility for this and freely thwarting authorities who are trying to get him to behave better.
When you've exceeded the GDP of many small countries.
That shouldn't
I agree. It should go the opposite way, right? That's why I think it's so terrible Bill Gates gets such a bad rap. He's spending his money getting people like, drinking water and free from disease.
Yeah,
he's the bad guy.
I'm going to give Melinda a lot of credit for that.
Well, sure.
When they started dating, he was building a grand monument to himself, a house that was just ridiculously oversized with full of all crazy technology. And she came along and I think really kind of set him.
She was like, you should really open source all of this. This technology is not going to work.
No, that wasn't. She didn't do that.
He's like, hold on, I'm rebooting the house. That'd be terrible. You're at Bill Gates' house and you're like, hey, Bill, I got to take a piss. He's like, you can't. It's updating. Sorry. The toilet's up.
Sorry. Blue screen of death. Blue screen of death. There's no peeing for another hour.
You're trying to be like, well, what do I do? And he's like, I don't know. Never a problem we've had before. Go play solitaire. I'm a minesweeper guy, Bill. Leave me alone.
Okay, enough of the headlines. Up next, CJ's going to talk about winning the lotto.
Yep, again.
Again? You've won it before?
Many times.
Lucky you.
Right? Are you familiar with the lotteries?
No, never heard of that. What is that?
They're fascinating. It's a guaranteed way for you to make money.
Oh, really? That's nice.
That's what I've heard.
Sure.
So we have Powerball and Mega Millions now. Those are the big ones
can't
people
win
talk
if
about.
you don't play.
You cannot win if you don't play. Turns out the only way to win is by not playing.
Yeah, that actually is how you win.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick was right.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with Powerball and Mega Millions, right? These are the big, like, multi-state, massive lotteries. Yes. Okay. I took a look at the 10 largest paid out awards ever of those two lotteries. And you're talking about $12 billion have been paid out over those 10, the top 10. Yeah, it's $12 billion, right? All those have come in like in the past 7 years. And the average award is about $1.2 billion of those top 10.
Yeah.
But the average winner made about $993 million, which kind of surprised me.
Because why? Why is that the case?
So
some of them got split?
They got split.
Yeah.
But of the top 10, only one got split.
You have two winners.
Right? Well, only one, of the top 10, one got split three ways. The other ones were all single winner.
Okay. Well, that brings down your average.
It does, to $993 million. Still not a bad deal.
There's parts of California you can live on that.
Yeah. Well, for a while. I mean, you still have to go away from
tighten your belt. You economize. Yeah, totally. You can make it.
You're still going to have some ramen months in there in the middle. So the odds of this are insane. You know what the odds are of winning a Powerball or a Mega Millions, of winning the whole thing?
One in three is what I heard.
It's 1 in 3.
Am I wrong?
It's really hard to get all 3 tickets though. It's like Willy Wonka. They fit together. It's about 1 in 300 million.
Okay.
Which is pretty nuts.
1 in 300 million. The country has 300 million people.
Yes.
A little more than that. Not much more than that.
It does. Now, for comparison, you are 23 times more likely to die in a tornado in any given year.
Yeah.
In your lifetime, you're 27 times more likely to die in a plane crash.
Right.
And you're about 5,000 times more likely to die by a bee sting or a hurricane.
Okay.
These are all things that you're way more likely to die from than winning the lottery.
Yeah.
I was just having fun with numbers when I was putting this together. You are 19,000 times more likely to get struck by lightning in your lifetime than win the lottery.
19,000
times in your lifetime.
Grief.
Right? How crazy is that? You're 26,000 times more likely to bowl a perfect game. Which, had you asked me, which was more like,
but a lot of people probably bowl perfect games or close to perfect games.
To me, I would have put the odds of like perfect game hitting the lotto about dead even.
No way.
Have you seen me bowl? It's terrible.
I'm not saying you're going to do it. Somebody who can actually bowl.
Sure. Well, they're apparently pulling the average up, and I'm pulling it down. Now get this. This is the topical one that made me put a little pause when I put these numbers in here. You are 27,000 times more likely to die by a mass shooting in your lifetime here in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
That means that in the U.S., you are 2.3 times more likely to die in a mass shooting in your lifetime than by plane, shark, tornado, hurricane, and bee stings combined.
Yeah, that seems like we're all going to know people who've died from mass shootings.
Doesn't that
very
seem
quickly?
Fucking insane?
That's a huge number.
If you take all of the movies that were made about the plane crashes and the fucking Sharknadoes and tornadoes and hurricanes, you add them all up, and you're just like, oh no, you're just more likely to get shot.
Oh, that's
in a mass shooting
horrible
in the U.S.
News. That's awful.
That's fucking terrible, is what that is, right?
We're a rather barbaric nation in this way. Australia woke up and changed laws quickly, and we're still not there. I don't know what it's going to take.
You are 300,000 times more likely to crack open a double yolk egg than win one of these jackpots.
I've got news for you.
Have you done it today?
I've cracked open a double yolk egg.
It's kind of cool.
Because we had chickens when I was growing up.
Did you eat them?
Yeah, it's just an egg. It's just who cares?
Of course. Some people throw them away.
And baby chickens, when they first start laying eggs, the young chickens, they do make errors. They do have double eggs.
I don't call it an error. I call that being super efficient.
Yeah, it's a benefit, really.
2 for 1.
I think if it goes all the way to hatching, it's a problem.
When they get older.
But if you eat it, it's great.
Sure. When it hatches, you just get, again, 2 for 1. You get 2 chickens.
Who might be, genetically connected somehow.
And this is good news you're really going to love. You are 50 million times more likely to get food poisoning this year than win one of these jackpots.
Oh, my.
Food poisoning in the U.S. is like 1 in 6.
Yeah, well, sure.
That's terrible. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, sure. That's terrible that in a given year you're going to get food poisoning.
I think probably a lot of the population gets food poisoning every year and they just don't know it. Because your system is so good at dealing with things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to go back in time 30 years.
Okay. I do too.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it'll be a thinner. This is actually just slightly before we met. That's how far back this is. Back when you were happy.
My son is older than you are when we met.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to sit down and start smoking.
Isn't that crazy?
Picked a bad week to quit sniffing glue. That's right, he is. That's crazy. February 15th, 1992, when a janky ball machine in Virginia State Lottery headquarters spit out 6 winning numbers on live television. Do you by chance remember this?
No.
You know where this is going? Okay. I'm not sure if you would or not. So in the coming days, officials would find out that one person, quote unquote, had secured not only the $27 million jackpot, but 6 second prizes, 132 third prizes, and 135,000 minor prizes, collectively worth another $900,000.
And what were the odds of that? 1 in 3?
The odds of that are about 1 in 3.
Sure.
Yeah, so they really knocked that out of the park.
The odds of that had to be billions and billions to 1.
So check this out. So what unfolded, and this is the story I want to talk about, is this sort of...
was this a scam? Was this like the McDonald's thing?
No. It was not a scam. So this was the strangest, most improbable lottery tale in history, right? It involved thousands of international investors, dozens of complex computer systems, and a Romanian expat operating from the other side of the world.
I'm in.
His name was Stephen Mandel. Okay. His backstory starts in the 1960s when, as a young Romanian economist, he was struggling to get by. At that time, Romania was under oppressive communist rule, a period that was marred by poverty and job and food shortages and just sort of this profound misery.
Sure. Communism.
Yeah, that's what we call it. He was making about $10 US a month.
Oh my.
And amazingly was having a hard time making ends meet.
Shocking.
Yeah, right? So, and he said this in this Planet Money interview he did a while ago. He said he needed a way to, quote, get some serious money quickly.
Sure.
And at the time, many Romanians that were in this predicament had out of necessity turned to lives of crime. He decided not to do that. As a self-described philosopher mathematician, he sought out the lottery as a way to make money.
Okay.
Now check this out. So he did some math and realized that he could minimize the combinations he needed to play to effectively guarantee some return. Not the jackpot, but some return.
Right.
He banded together with 4 friends, each of whom bought 228 tickets per draw. Miraculously, and with a bit of luck, he won the first prize of about $2,000 US, or about $17,000 adjusted for inflation today.
Okay.
After expenses, he had made enough money to bribe foreign ministry officials and flee Romania for a new life.
Oh,
so he
good
basically
for him.
did this his first time to get out of Romania, right?
Yeah, great.
So now he's out of Romania. He's roaming around.
Of course, now all of his investors are still stuck in Romania and they don't have anybody who can make them money.
Well, they made money too. They can do what they want with it, right? I think everybody got a take in it. Okay, so now he's out of Romania. He roamed Europe for a handful of years before settling down in Australia. And he decided to set out to game the lottery in a different way. He figured that when the jackpot of a given lottery exceeded about 3 times the cost to buy every combination of ticket, he could likely make a decent profit. Over a period of years, he convinced hundreds of investors to pool their money together and create a lottery syndicate. He then developed a full-fledged automation system, a room full of printers, computers, all running on this algorithm that pre-populated tickets with every combination.
Okay.
Ultimately, it was the computers that revolutionized his process, right? Before, he'd been limited to writing out millions of combinations by hand, and a single mistake could ruin months worth of work. Right. Cost millions of dollars. So now he could just outsource all that to the machine, right? So throughout the 80s, his syndicate would wait until a jackpot was at least 3 times bigger than the cost of covering all possible combinations. Then he would move in to buy thousands of tickets. they managed to win.
So these are when lotteries roll over.
Yes.
It can't be when a lottery happens in one go.
Yes.
It has to. You have to have money that rolls over.
I should have covered this earlier. As a lottery, when there is a typical lottery, when someone does not win the big jackpot, that rolls over to the next week.
All those tickets that get dumped from that week, and now we're starting over with the money, but without the tickets.
So he would wait until these lotteries got big enough that there was 3 times the cost of covering every combination.
Now I'm understanding it.
Now check this out. They managed to win 12 lotteries.
Sure.
Right? And rake in 400,000 smaller prizes across Australia, including a $1.1 million haul in 1986. But by this point, his system had attracted some negative attention. His repeated wins prompted Australian lottery authorities to change the law, disallowing a single person from covering every possible combination.
I was literally about to ask you, why did he have investors? Why wouldn't you pay for this entirely yourself? And now I'm seeing why.
Well, now you're seeing why. So that was easy because all he had to do was find partners.
Yeah.
So he put together an investment group, gathered 5 more people who started purchasing tickets and splitting the prizes, right? They would just say, well, you buy 1/5 of them, I buy 1/5 of them. And so the next stop was a law that banned a group of people from buying all lottery tickets. I feel like the Australians are doing this very piecemeal.
They're one step behind them.
Yep. So then he was like, all right, he just established a lotto company and purchased tickets as a business entity, right? He just kept like getting one step ahead of them.
I didn't know you could do that.
Well, there he could at the time. It was also the 80s, right? It was the Wild West. They had Crocodile Dundee running around the streets down there. Like, it's Australia. Come on. So he did this like 12 times in Australia. And then he was like, all right, this is just getting too complicated. He knew the authorities were targeting him and the environment was changing, that he had to leave, right? He had to go somewhere else.
So if only there was another country that had big lotteries.
So he set his sights on a much bigger feat, one that would make international headlines ultimately and boggle the minds of lottery officials around the world. Mandel began by identifying U.S. lotteries where the jackpot had risen to at least 3 times the cost of buying all possible combinations, with the intent of pre-printing all the tickets needed to cover the lotteries. Ultimately, he printed out tickets for 6 U.S. lotteries, including Massachusetts, where you had a $37 million jackpot across about 9 million combinations, Arizona, which had about $11 million over 5 million combinations, and Virginia. Now, Virginia's lottery offered several advantages. It was new. It allowed buyers to purchase tickets in unlimited quantities and print them at home.
Oh, wow.
More importantly, its numbers only ranged from 1 to 44. Other states went as high as 54.
Okay.
This meant that with 6 picks, there were only 7 million possible combinations compared to the usual sort of 25 million plus.
Right.
So it's just less to execute on. He set up an agency with a major insurance company. He established a trust that convinced over 2,500 people to buy a 10-year whole life insurance policy with a $4,000 annual premium. I still don't understand this step, but that's what was in there. This allowed him to use the money legally to buy each person a stake in the lottery, right?
So he could borrow against it?
I'm guessing.
The full value of it?
I don't fully know why he did that. And you'll sort of see at the end, it even gets more confusing as to why that was the case. But in a Melbourne warehouse in Australia, he set up 30 computers, 12 laser printers, and he hired 16 full-time employees to print millions of tickets, pre-populated with every combination across these 6 lotteries. It took about 3 months. He then shipped this, Wouldn't
the lottery be over by then, 3 months later?
No. Because the numbers, this is the brilliant part of this. Right, the numbers are always the numbers, right? They change the lottery very infrequently in terms of the terms of it. So he pre-printed all these are called drop slips. He pre-printed all of them and had like a Virginia box, a Massachusetts box, right? Like had them all pre-printed, put them on a pallet, spent $60,000 shipping them to the U.S. and then just let them sit. So now he's waiting, right? Okay. He's identified the lotteries.
Waiting for one to hit.
Waiting for one to be in the window of where he thinks he can make money.
Yeah.
With the ticket secured in Virginia, Mandel had to wait until the jackpot hit a number that would make financial sense, right after taxes, overhead, paying off his investors.
Sure.
A state lottery prize typically starts in the low millions at the time, and then would increase as those drawings wouldn't
go by with
won.
No winner, right?
Yeah, with no winner. And this is how we end up with these billion-dollar jackpots today. No one has won in quite some time.
Right.
So he had to anticipate when to strike, and had hoped for the best that there wouldn't be multiple winners, because if you have multiple winners, you split the pot, which would just crush his margin. On February 12th, 1992. The Virginia lottery jackpot hit $15.5 million. Mandel told his team on the ground to go. Go. Execute. So as Mandel knew, the buy all combinations method of winning the lottery was more of a logistical than a financial challenge. Right?
Sure,
the hard part was executing on this. And while tickets could be legally printed at home, they still had to be taken to an authorized lotto retailer in the U.S. and paid for.
Of course.
Right? And processed. Mandel hired the accounting firm Lowe Lipman to transfer $9 million in investor funds to a bank in Boston, where it was cut into $10,000 cashier's checks. He then lined up in advance deals with Virginia-based retailer chains to buy the tickets in bulk. So the retailers benefit from this because they make money off every transaction, and if they sell a winning ticket, they get a bonus.
Okay.
So for them, they're like, this is great, right? This is super efficient.
Let's go, sure.
Okay, so his point person on the ground to orchestrate all this mayhem was an esteemed associate by the name of Antahali Alex. This dude was like outfitted in a gold Rolex. He always had on like a safari suit. He was a sweet talker who could make the world seem like a bed of roses, right? That's the quote that I saw. He was an ex-paratrooper turned Rolls-Royce salesman, turned oil prospector. He was fresh out of bankruptcy court with like $400,000 in debt.
Of course he was.
A bunch of maxed out credit cards. And he was just ready for any old action he could find.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is kind of the type of people you're getting to work on your lottery plan. The jackpot hit $15 million on that Wednesday. The next draw would be on Saturday. That means they had 72 hours to pull this off. Alex met with a team of 35 couriers that were all hired by Mandel. Most of them were certified accountants. They distributed these cellophane-wrapped bundles of 10,000 tickets with stacks of $10,000 cashier's checks. For 2 straight days, the couriers methodically descended on 125 gas stations and supermarkets. These were like at Farm Fresh, Miller Mart, Teeny Giant, like all these like locations throughout Virginia. These store clerks, their brains broke when they were asked to buy and process 1.4 million algorithmically generated lottery tickets.
Sure.
Right? Like all of these tickets had to be processed. By Saturday evening, the team was nearing completion. Then disaster struck. One of the chains who had sold tickets in bulk got overwhelmed and quit in the final hours, leaving 140,000 tickets, about 700,000 combinations of numbers on the table. Yeah. And they were fucked. They had no contingency, right? When the deadline for entry arrived, around 1.2 million of Mandel's 1.4 million tickets had been processed.
Yeah.
Mandel's foolproof plan, which
was no longer foolproof.
Was no longer foolproof. So he had about 8.5% of the combinations not covered.
Oh, that's crazy.
Right. So now you've gone from, if you covered all the numbers, right, your odds were 1 in 1. Now you're like, well, there's about an 8.5% chance. Of luck. Yeah, there's some real luck to this, which I just find is like the irony of this in the story
Still a small
lottery. It's small, but you know, you used all your dry powder doing this. Right. Okay, so now it looked more like he was a regular lottery ticket than you know what it should have been. At 11:20 p.m. on February 15th, the numbers were drawn on live TV. In a nearby warehouse, Alex and his team waited with bated breath. Then the victorious shout came. They'd won. They found the $27 million ticket. Everybody, the quote was that when they found it, everybody was 6 feet off the ground, right? It was the most incredible thing in the world. It was purchased at a Farm Fresh in Chesapeake. The ticket had been processed in the twilight hours, right? It was like one of the last ones. Alex's diligence had paid off. From his home in Australia, Mandel sent out a short message to his 2,500 investors and said, quote, one of our target lotteries did jackpot to our required level. We entered and we won. The $27 million jackpot, remember there's another $900,000 in secondary prizes, was to be paid out in 20 annual installments of $1 million.
Okay.
But Virginia's lottery SARS had other plans. Although everything Mandel did was completely legal under both U.S. and Virginia state law, the Australian group's feat was interpreted as an effort to, quote, cheat the traditional system.
Sure.
The Virginia lottery director, this guy named Ken Thorson, pled to the press, we might remember Thomas Jefferson's view of a lottery. It is an opportunity for the common man to spend a small sum for the possibility of a higher prize. And he said, we never anticipated a group trying to make such a large purchase, which I had no idea Jefferson played the lottery.
That's your problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Mandel was subjected to an investigation involving 14 international agencies, including supposedly the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, the National Crime Authority, and the Australian Securities Commission. That seems like a lot of firepower for what is a fucking, a guy playing the lottery legitimately, but okay. In the end, neither Mandel nor his...
It's a guy who understands math.
Exactly.
Well, it's really all it is.
Like this math isn't really even that hard.
It's not even hard math.
It's not even hard math. When I was reading about some of these people were like, oh, well, they had like these algorithms. I'm like, to calculate every fucking number?
Right.
Like, I know 6-year-olds that can do that. One of them is my kid. Like, this isn't hard. In the end, neither Mandel nor the company who set up the International Lottery Foundation was found guilty of any wrongdoing.
No, of course.
Meanwhile, in his home country of Australia, he became something of a folk hero, right? There's an article in People magazine that described him as a kangaroo hopping out of the U.S. with a pouch full of cash.
That's awesome.
Which I think is spectacular. The dust settles. Each person who bought into the lottery, though, sort of his Mandel's life insurance policy. These are small business owners, machine operators, housekeepers, and doctors. They made out with about $1,500, right? About $1,400 US.
It's a lot of work for $1,500.
Well, yeah, but these folks ponied up $4,000 to get into this in annual premiums. So I don't understand how that happened.
Oh,
right?
it wasn't $1,400 above?
No,
the cost of their life insurance.
$1.4 back. That's what I didn't understand.
Total back. So they're in the hole.
My assumption was he was going to do more of these. This is the part of the story that is unclear to me.
Okay.
Right? Because now it gets a little dark. So, folks weren't pleased with this. One of his investors described him as, Stephen Mandel is not only irrelevant, he is toxic. And I was like, wait a minute, what happened? So apparently Mandel paid himself a one-time, quote, consultant's fee of $1.7 million.
Sure.
And then sold the annuity on the 20-year payout to a U.S. insurance company for a lump sum of $14 million. After overhead fees, which was like $5 million for the tickets, $500,000 in expenses, he was left with a bunch of money. And apparently that never got distributed. So I don't fully, there's a gap in there of what happened. And I couldn't find anything that talked about that. It seems like he may have just...
It seems like before you take the investment, before you agree to be part of the... You have to be able to see that payout formula.
You'd like to know what that looks like. I'm assuming
or you just say no.
They were planning on doing more of these, but it sounds like this dude walked away with $10 million.
Yeah.
Right? Or $15 million. So records show that he funneled this cash into a Pacific Basin Fund, which was a Hong Kong-based account managed by his brother-in-law. That's never a good sign.
Okay.
He then wrote a 1994 letter to investors that said, quote, what we calculated to be the reality has changed. It may not seem like such a hot investment now. And then he just stopped writing investor updates.
Oh, my.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. That seems like a weird outcome. Just a few years later, in 95, Mandel declared bankruptcy. He then spent the next decade running various investment schemes, one of which earned him a 10-month jail sentence in Israel for the alleged non-publication of a prospectus in a cooperative society, which I thought was a very strange charge.
It's an interesting way of putting it.
Dropped later. Today, this dude is spending his days at a beach house on a remote tropical island in Vanuatu, which is a country off the coast of Australia. Right? He lives a quiet life, and he is, quote, retired from the lottery.
Retired from scammery.
He's retired from scamming, apparently, although he should come back to the U.S. because it's alive and large now. His associate, this guy, Antahali Alex, his one-time associate, he also dropped off the grid, keeps a low profile somewhere in Illinois. He said years later, you could not have written a script as good as this, right? This is a one-time real life, better than fiction sort of deal. And the most detail I could find on this came from an article in The Hustle, which I'll put into the links. They finished by saying, quote, while they were able to piece together the logistics of Mandel's 20-year lottery career, he's never revealed the minute details of his algorithm. As he told an inquiring AP report in 1992, that would be like Coca-Cola revealing their recipe.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what fucking algorithm? What's
your
algorithm?
The algorithm is $1 for you, $2 for me.
Yeah. Well, maybe more. One for you,
sure.
100 for me.
Sure.
Interestingly, his legacy still lives on in the U.S. All 44 states that run lotteries have now enacted laws preventing the profitable replication of Mandel's strategy. In effect, this secures him a title as the first and last man to ever successfully game the lottery by buying every possible combination. I thought this was crazy. I remember when this happened. I remember seeing this as a kid. I distinctly remember on the news.
How come this isn't a movie?
It does seem like it should be a film, right?
Yeah, totally.
All right, up next, Jeff's going to talk about beating the heat, historically at least.
Sort of. Of all the days, today is slightly cooler than the...
Like 106 instead of 104 or whatever.
But it's a little cooler today.
I don't know,
In any
man.
case, go back a month, just 1 month to July. July was the hottest month for our planet on record.
Yeah.
Now, the actual hard data goes back to 1940, but many scientists, including those at Copernicus, do you know Copernicus?
The guy?
The European Union program that provides free and open access to Earth observation data and services. The Copernicus Weather Service is one of the 7 Copernicus services, and it provides weather forecasts, climate monitoring, and seasonal forecasts.
Sure. No, I don't know it, but I love it.
Yeah, no, they're great. They say it is almost certain that these temperatures, the temperatures that we had in July, are the warmest the planet has seen in 120,000 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
They say that from a millennia of climate data extracted from tree rings, coral reefs, and deep sea sediment cores.
Wow, that's what's crazy. It's like a layer cake. You just look back in time in one of these cores.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's really
pretty
cool.
Remember in the 70s, if you wanted to, those people that like cook a chicken by putting it in the engine compartment of their car.
Oh, sure.
Now I just put it in the passenger compartment of the car.
Put it on the passenger seat.
Totally. On the drive over.
Sure.
Yeah, I made a rotisserie chicken. Suck that, Costco. Your $5 chicken. It cost me $12, but still, I got my own chicken.
So while we should probably spend this episode talking about human-caused climate change, and on this show, how it's increased turbulence in aircraft, instead, I'm going to chicken out and take the easy way out for this episode. And instead of discussing climate change and human-caused climate change, I'm going to discuss the miracle of air conditioning.
I love it.
In 1758, the very first documented testing of evaporative air conditioning occurred.
In 1758?
1758.
So, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're telling me air conditioning is older than this country?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Benjamin Franklin
good old
in
Ben.
Philadelphia
Yeah.
on a very hot summer day in a sweaty shirt.
Okay.
takes off his sweaty shirt and puts on a dry shirt.
Okay.
And discovers the sweaty wet shirt is cooler.
Oh, interesting.
What's going on here that's making the sweaty shirt cooler?
Okay.
He gets with a fellow scientist and conducts a series of experiments that show what is the basis for what is our modern day knowledge of evaporative air conditioning. He and a chemistry professor from Cambridge University in England, John Hadley, they used a bellows directed at a mercury thermometer to quicken the evaporation of liquid.
Interesting.
The mercury thermometer bulb, they dipped it in water, they blew air at it, and they noticed that, wow, they could make the temperature go lower, 64 degrees at the time. They could make the temperature drop significantly by blowing air at it to make the evaporation happen faster.
Sure.
Well, this worked so well, they thought, well, let's dip it in alcohol.
Okay.
By then, they're probably drinking, and they're saying, you know what we ought to do?
Hold my beer.
Sure.
Put my mercury stick in it.
So he dips the bulb in alcohol.
Sure.
They blow on it. And, of course, they can lower the temperature even lower.
Of course, yeah.
So then they go, well, if alcohol's good, ether must be even better because it evaporates faster.
Yeah, of course.
Well, who doesn't have ether at the house?
Of course.
They dip the thermometer bulb into the ether, and they blow on it with the bellows, and they take it down from 64 degrees all the way down to 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's impressive.
Which means ice crystals have formed on it. About a quarter of an inch of ice has formed on the ball of the thermometer.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of evaporative air conditioning as we know it. Ben Franklin's line is, from this experiment, one may see the possibility of freezing a man to death on a warm summer's day.
Wow.
I don't know why Ben went from, hey, let's just cool everybody down and make everybody comfortable, all the way to murder. But that's what he did. Before air conditioners, people used ice blocks to stay cool. In fact, the output ratings of the very first air conditioners were measured based on how much ice would have been needed to achieve the same cooling power.
I got 3 blocks in this air conditioner.
In 1806, Frederick Tudor of Boston became the ice king, and he sold blocks of natural ice from Boston's ponds. He shipped ice halfway around the globe. And this led to the creation of the icebox, which we call today the refrigerator. The very first building supposedly to have air conditioner, Westminster Abbey. There's no documentation left behind to tell us what they did, but it's likely the temperature was lowered with natural ice and salt mixed in to lower the temperature at which the ice would melt. Warm air was blown over it, creating a cooling effect by as much as 20 degrees. Now, I've been to Westminster Abbey in the summer, and even now, it's not cool.
It's not, well,
So whatever that system was, it wasn't great.
Sure.
And I'm sure we've improved on it. It's still not great.
Still not good? It's the same one, just sitting in the window somewhere?
That place gets warm.
It's all made out of stone, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a giant, heat sink.
Correct.
So once it gets hot, you're not cooling it down.
Correct. That's probably,
but when it's cold,
probably
it
the
stays
problem
cold.
of the building. There's no central air conditioning system in the building. Of course, it was built long before any of that existed.
So you're saying this is the start of air conditioning. This is also the start of you using the imperial system. You've given this to me in Fahrenheit and inches.
Sorry, dude. It's England and it's the United States, and that's what it is. So
1750s.
It's what I got. In the late 1800s, New York's Madison Square Garden and theaters across the country were using ice to cool patrons at summer evening performances. Using a fan, the air was pushed through a cheesecloth filled with ice and blown directly into the theater.
That's great.
In 1842, John Gorey, speaking of medical people, used compressor technology to make ice, which he used to cool air for patients in hospitals. His main plan was to use this technology in conjunction with centralized air ducts. So this was the beginning of the idea of centralized air ducts to cool off an entire building.
Brilliant.
He had grandiose visions of being able to cool off entire cities, but sadly was unable to make much headway with his invention due to his poor health and the fact that his financial backers suddenly dropped dead. This is the big moment. On July 17th, 1902, Willis Carrier engineered the world's first air conditioning system. It wasn't designed for comfort. It was invented to control humidity in a printing plant, Satchett Williams Lithography and Printing in Brooklyn, New York. It was so humid in the summer that the paper stock would grow and shrink.
Wow.
So if you're making a color image on your paper, you need your paper to be one size because you're going to run it through the press 4 times. For 4 different inks. And if it's different size, now you have your registration is now all screwed up. And so you get blurry images, which is not good. But on a foggy day, which is 100% humidity, he figured if I can manufacture 100% humidity, I can combine it in whatever proportions I need. I can get right to 55% humidity. And if the pressure inside the building was greater than outside the building, he could keep the room at exactly, could keep the inside of the building at exactly 55% humidity and get perfect.
And that's the magic number for
get
print
perfect
stock
printing. Right.
Interesting.
Soon factories and mills everywhere were installing Carrier's apparatus for treating air.
Is that what he called it?
He was good at creating
terrible marketing
mechanics. He was terrible at marketing.
Hey, turn on the apparatus for cooling air.
Exactly. This was the beginning of the compression, condensation, expansion, and evaporation model that we still use today. In 1906, Stuart Kramer was exploring ways to add moisture into his textile mills, piggybacking off of Carrier's invention when he coined the term air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
In 1908, the Carrier Air Conditioning Company of America was created as a subsidiary of the Buffalo Forge Company, with Willis Carrier as its vice president. With the onset of World War I in late 1914, the Buffalo Forge Company, where Carrier had been employed for 12 years, decided to confine its activities entirely to manufacturing. The result was they were out.
Okay.
And 7 young engineers pooled together their life savings of $32,600 to form the Carrier Engineering Corporation of New York on June 16th of 1915. Over time, the company became one of the largest employers in central New York.
I bet.
During the Great Depression, movie theaters spotted an opportunity. The summer movie phenomenon was started thanks to air conditioning. Before air conditioning, people didn't want to go to the movies in the summer because it was just too hot.
You just bake inside, yeah.
This air conditioning literally created Hollywood's golden age.
Wow, that's crazy.
Willis Carrier's igloo-shaped pavilion in the 1939 New York World's Fair gave visitors a glimpse into the future of air conditioning, but before it became popular, World War II began.
Oh, whoopsies.
In the United States, air conditioning now accounts for about 15% of all electricity use.
That's a lot.
Air conditioning has helped make it possible to live in warmer regions. For example, the population of Phoenix, Arizona has increased dramatically since air conditioning became widespread.
Yeah, you can't live there without it.
You could not have the internet without air conditioning.
Why not?
Have you thought about that?
No. Oh, yeah, of course. Bunch of machines.
Because you couldn't have data centers without air conditioning.
Yeah, sure.
Think about this. The desktop computer you have.
Sure.
You could not have that without air conditioning. In order to get to the small desktop computers we have now, you had to go through computers that were in large rooms that were full of air conditioning. You can't get to now unless you go through then, and then required air conditioning.
Yeah, that's crazy. I never thought about that.
Air conditioning also helped make modern medicine possible. For example, it allows surgeons to perform delicate surgeries in a controlled environment that they couldn't perform otherwise. Yeah. Certain medications like the COVID-19 mRNA vaccination couldn't exist without extreme cooling.
It has to be made in a cool environment.
It has to be kept in a cool environment right up until it's injected into your body.
Wow. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
if you remember, those all have to stay very, very cold. All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
I'm sure the answer to this is yes.
Okay.
But I just have to think about it. I did have my kids solo. We're making dinner, and I did decide to turn on the Republican debate and watch that.
Yeah.
Because that day I was feeling very good about myself, and I wanted to just suck all that out.
Sure.
There were several highlights. My two favorites centered around show of hands, one of which being who here believes that climate change is man-made and real, and there were no hands.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, Vivi being Vivi, which is just
I don't know.
Amazing. Midway through, I'm Googling this guy. I'm like, okay, you're an entrepreneur. Let's really think about what that means. And I was like, hey, you're not an entrepreneur. You better I just heard a little bit of Mark Cuban talking on SmartLess.
Speaking of entrepreneurs.
And I didn't know that he bought the Mavericks from Ross Perot Jr.
Yeah.
And he tells a really great story about meeting Ross Perot Sr. for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And he was super excited because Ross Perot Sr. was the guy in Dallas,
of course.
And he said he was a little nervous. And when he went in to meet him, he walked up confidently and said, hello, Mr. Cuban, I'm Ross Perot Sr.
That's hilarious.
But I said this because Cuban said the first person he ever voted for was Ross Perot, which I thought was pretty funny. I am 100% certain you have seen something more interesting than the debates. What have you seen?
I've seen a movie, and I want to preface this by saying I've seen an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
The movie Strays,
okay,
which is basically if you made a charming kids movie about a dog who, for whatever reason, got lost and separated from its owner and had to find its way home.
Yeah.
If you made that movie, only you made it as filthy and foul as you could possibly make it for adults. That's this movie. Will Ferrell, Jamie Foxx, Isla Fisher, Will Forte, Josh Gad, Sofia Vergara. I just want to stress one more time, this is rated R. It is not a children's movie.
Yep,
in theaters now. Really fun.
I'm definitely going to check that out now.
Yeah. That's the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Stu Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, what is wrong with you? Please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple, Google Podcasts, Apple, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, our favorite, Overcast, or wherever you may get your podcast from.
I thought you were saying what is wrong with you to me.
Oh, yes.
I believed you. I was like, what did I do?
I mean, people seem to listen to the show because at least the people that I know are like, we love the show. I listen to it every week. And my little response is, are you okay?
You know, that's Katharine Hepburn's line.
Is it really?
People would come up to Katharine Hepburn and they would say, oh my gosh, I've seen every film you're in. I've read your autobiography. And she would say, why?
That's great.
Podcastindex.org, I was supposed to say. Special thanks to our floor director, Frank Miles.
Oh, thank you, Frank. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us. No, I think this is the good stuff.